So I'm back at the shop today. We have Jake, we're tattooing. We're gonna be doing a Jesus piece. But before any of that, let's get some coffee. So let's take a look at what we have so far. Everything here is healed. You know, we're continuing this sleeve. We got this little stairway up with these cool lanterns, got some silhouettes here into Jesus' face. We're gonna cap the top today, so we're gonna be relining up the stencil, filling in some of the back. We have a cover up kind of going on over here as well that we're just gonna try to cover up with the hair. We're gonna do a lot of motion and zigzag. We're trying to confuse them, you know, try to confuse them, get them away from the D. This piece already is looking really nice and cohesive to me. That was kind of my goal. You know, we have like dark, detailed, you know, left it pretty simple, some good negative space gaps in there. Like I feel like it reads well from far away. We have a lot of light here, and that's why we just kept these silhouettes dark and simple. But you can see this whole area is pretty light. This is a little darker, so it's like dark, light, and we're gonna do dark again up here with the face. I want this to look nice and full. So that's gonna be implementing a lot of values into my negative space. I don't wanna leave too much negative space. It won't look like full of life, you know? So we're gonna get this re-stencil in. I'm gonna kind of walk you guys through this piece especially. A lot of times in tattooing, like people want the same images, right? As a group, we've kind of decided like what looks cool, what's a common thing to get. And just because something's common doesn't mean it's not cool, right? Obviously, this isn't the first Jesus tattoo you've ever seen. So whenever I approach a piece like that, I try to add my own spin to it. You know, like, okay, yeah, we've seen someone do a Jesus tattoo before. So what parts of my style, my creativity can I implement in what we can call a common image to make it its own piece, right? So for us, definitely it's like implementing this whole sleeve, creating the stairs and this whole scene rather than just a standalone. So that's one way. And then I'm gonna walk you guys specifically through like what I'm thinking about as I'm doing this to make it my own. You know, I think with every tattoo you should approach it like that, whether it's one of your completely original designs or whether you're doing, you know, a popular image. We see this all the time in like pop culture, movie references, you know, portraits and stuff like that. So cool. I'm gonna finish this and then we'll get into the re-stencil. So we're lining the stencil back up. I just try to use some reference points that make sense to me. You know, we have this top ridge at the eyebrows. You can see how I left it. Like it's pretty like clean lines. I have some of these hair strands that'll help me like line up. I just eyed it out, you know. I printed out, you know, one size that was like a little too big. I have this one here. So I try to get those things lined up. I'm looking at the eyebrow. I'm looking at these hair strands. Everything's kind of meeting the way. And then I'll press it all the way down because sometimes it changes a little when you start to curve it. It still looks good to me. You know, I don't mind if the hair isn't like perfectly connected. That would be easy to redraw. I just want to make sure it makes sense as like a forehead. I'm gonna get some stencil stuff on here now. But, you know, sometimes this will take a few tries and that's okay. You know, do it right, get it perfect. There's definitely been times in the past where I was like, close enough. And turns out it wasn't close enough. And it made the whole fucking session really stressful. So we want to get those main parts and then we're going to check it. There are some things, like I said, you can kind of like let go, or at least I feel comfortable letting go. Like hair, you know, I could redraw hair. So we're going to use those same indicators. If you want to mark it with a marker, you can do that. Some people like to do that. I don't really care. So the eyebrows look good. Some of this stuff's like a little bit off. Now all this is already done, so I can like wipe that away. And I'm gonna kind of see what I'm left with. So let me clean this off. To me, first glance, this looks good enough. So let me wipe it off and we'll take a look at some final stencil product. All right, let's take a look at this. So wipe this off. For me, this is fine. I'm gonna reconnect these little points here that are a little off. This one lines up good. I was more worried about this area here. That forehead, we didn't want to overdo the forehead. You know, that can really change someone's look. So this is good. We're gonna blast the top background here so it reaches, right? Because this is like a little low. So if we just left it there, it would make Jake look smaller. You know, and he's big muscle dude, so I want to leave him there. We're gonna bring this all the way back here. I want this to be dark, one for our cover up, and two, because like when you leave it light there, it's gonna draw attention. I want the attention on the face, right? So this is gonna be like the light area. So this is all gonna be dark. We don't want them looking back at the tricep. So we'll let that dry and we'll get into it. Hope you guys are enjoying the video. I know I am, definitely having fun tattooing. If you love tattooing as much as I do, you will love my 3RL seminar on unseenlevel.com, along with many other artists giving away their information to you guys for an affordable rate. That's our whole thing here, getting you guys the knowledge you need to tattoo at the best of your ability. Back to the video. So this whole forehead area, I want to keep it light. I want you to be able to tell like what's hair, what's skin. Obviously I went dark on the eyes, and I'm gonna be revisiting some of these areas with the ultra black, but I'm using the 10 gauge now. Remember we talked about the 10 gauge 3RL? So the bug pin 3RL, it's a little bit more forgiving. It shades in lighter, right? It's a lot easier to like build up if you're worried, you know, you don't want to make something too dark. So I'm just hitting this area. I'm gonna go a little lighter maybe than I think, and then I'll put the surrounding darks in. And then if I have to bump this area up to get the values that we talked about in the beginning, no problem. We can always go darker, right? One major benefit to today's tattoo is Jake is a dad, so I get to talk to him about all my fun experiences of staying up late and getting shit and pissed on by the baby. And he knows what that's about.
Dad stuff.
Dad stuff. So mostly just doing the circle pattern, just doing little circles here, just to get like the tones in. Kind of simple, and then I'll go back and like pick and flick and create a little more definition, but it's almost like I'm just eliminating the skin tone. Like here I'll create like a little brow ridge, so I'll pick and flick, right? So we start to see like kind of that line forming there, but that first base layer, it's just getting the tone in, just opening the skin up. I'm keeping it a lot more simple than the reference photo. We get this strand of hair in. A lot of times, like with the hair, I'll kind of create a defining line on the back side. And then I'm not gonna do that on the other side. I'm just gonna bring the tone to it. Right, so rather than like feathering in a line all the way down, we're just making the tone right beside it, which will kind of create a cutoff point in comparison. You don't want to over define the hair, it can look weird. I did see some questions in the comments about like pulling long fades. I also saw people talking about that in the Discord. One of the kind of first issues or problems that you need to solve with the 3RL is like, how do I do these long fades? So just to kind of brush up on that again, I'm gonna do it on a small scale. I'll show you on the forehead here. Let's say you run into an area where like, you know, it's hard to pull a fade from here all the way to over here, you know, or down or whatever. You have this on a big scale. A lot of times I find my darkest point of the fade. You know, if we're looking at this piece of hair right here, and I'm fading the forehead, the darkest part is by the hair. So I'll start with that, right? So imagine this is like a lot bigger. And I'll kind of pick and flick from that area And I'll just bring it out as far as my hand is comfortable, right? I don't want to stretch it too much because then it's going to make the dots farther apart. And the longer I'm going, I kind of have to slow down. So like if I'm tight here, I can move quick, right? If I'm long here, I have to slow down. And the longer I get, try to go a little slower. Because if you go fast, it's going to be like choppy. So you're building up the darkness in the darkest part. And then it does, for extending it, it does help to crosshatch. So now I'm not going to touch this part of the hair, but I'm going to do like kind of small circles. So not a pick and flick, small circles. That way it doesn't really show a starting point. And I'm just going to try to do small circles and extend to the next part of the fade, almost like a rainbow, right? So darkest part, the next part, and you can see it extend. And then just the last part. I'm gonna do this a little quicker because I want it lighter, right? So this whole last part of the rainbow, a little quicker. You know, and then you can cross hatch. And it's almost like you're just working it in, right? You're hitting it from every angle. You can come up and down. And this helps you avoid kind of like a block or a transition that isn't smooth. And then we're just gonna kind of do the same thing. We're gonna revisit the pick and flick. We're gonna flick off the fade. You can even extend it a little more than maybe you originally did. Now you're going over part of the second fade, right? You see it like leaking in, and it's a slow buildup. We want it slow though, because slow means it's only making slight changes to the tone. When we make harsh changes is when it doesn't look smooth, right? And now I'm gonna come down on top. If I'm working on the dark part of the fade, like here, I don't mind moving a little slower. If I'm in the light, I gotta be quick, right? Because we don't wanna make it too dark. So like, let's say I wanna polish up part of the lighter, you know, I'm gonna just be on the top of the skin, so my depth is a little more shallow, and I'm moving quick in a circle. Right, and it definitely takes some practice, you know, but I almost section it off, you know, like a rainbow in like little strips. And you don't press too hard, you know. So that's the fade that's extended, and you're just gonna do that on a bigger scale. You know, you're gonna do your first, your second overlapping, third overlapping, right? On the big fades, it takes a long time. So if you find yourself like taking even a few hours on like a back piece or something to get those huge fades, like for me, that's normal. You're just slowly building it up. So I got all the textures in and the shapes that I wanted, but it's a little flat. So I just kind of like lightly worked it in with, you know, grays. So now I'm gonna go back in with a small mag and put the black in the hair. I'm gonna brush over, you know, darken all this up. I left this open for now because I'm gonna use that space in my cover up. So like, you know, all that's in there, which is cool. But you can see it's like dark gray to skin tone. There's no black. So I'm gonna come in and start implementing this black. So this is kind of the more relaxed part. Getting all the shapes and shades in there, requires a lot of focus. So it's already in there. We got the hard part in. It's kind of annoying to like work on this back part of the arm, if I'm being honest. Now I'm gonna be like creating this extra layer with the darkness. But yeah, just using the ultra black and kind of pushing back some of those. This will bump up the contrast too, which is nice. But it's also gonna make like everything around it a little lighter, like these negative spots. See, like they really jump out as I make this darker. So I'm gonna have to make sure I go over those as well. We don't want them popping out too much. So let me get this. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So now that like strand of hair really jumps out, so I'm just gonna quick dip in my gray wash and just kind of go over that to tone it down. You know, and there it stays in the background, right? And you'll see me brushing over a lot of the hair strands, pushing them back. This is gonna help just kind of create nice flow and like layering in the hair. A lot of times I'll kind of pick a section, I'll be like, okay, that's in the forefront, like this strand here, you know? So everything around it is gonna be darker so that this kind of stays in the front like it's coming at you. Sometimes I'll do all the strands like negative space and then literally just put shades on top of them and kind of figure that out. Push that back, bring that forward, push that back. We are done for the day on this Jesus face here. I did end up going back into some of the healed spots, you know, nostrils, some of the lips and all that. So you will notice like parts of the face look darker where it's healed and then it's still like muted in the healed part. But yeah, that was just some touch-ups. Always, with the multiple session pieces, it's always good to look back on what you did, make sure you like it. But we got these thorns in here, the dark on the top, the hair. A lot of this is kind of grayed out, brings our focus to the face. But quite a few times today I had Jake stand up so I could just kind of see the whole arm together, right? Because it's all one piece. Even though we were just focusing on the portrait up top today, we want to make sure it looks good, it looks in balance with everything around it, everything else going on, you know, so comparing this to here to this, right? So I'm gonna let him dry. We are going to kind of take some pictures and videos, see what's going on. Keep in mind, some of it's healed, some of it's fresh, so you will see some variation in that. We started a little bit on the cover up back there, you know, just laying in some of this hair. I don't want to go too far over or too far in the rest because we still have the whole inside of the arm to do. So once I get that main subject on the inside, then at the end I'll start connecting on the side all these pieces. Just made up some flow points during, you can see right here. It's almost like kind of hair shapes, but it's negative. It's not necessarily hair, but you know, just some negative spaces that go up the tricep nice to keep some flow. And you guys can look at that when we take the videos. Even his hair coming down, it kind of falls into the bicep. All these things are intentional. Let's clean it up, we'll get some pictures and videos.